All right, I'm recording now. Welcome to the Dr. Anita Show. I'm so glad that you're here. We had a little bit of a spirited conversation here in the first couple of minutes because I didn't actually start. I wanted to wait until more people got on. I started at the top of the hour, and I guess the person who was watching got a little frustrated because I was not taking this serious topic seriously, and I was not fully explaining why there is no such thing as procrastination. But I will now allow this opportunity to fully explain that because he was getting frustrated that I wasn't doing that early. Because what happens is I do log on early to Blab, and I do that actually to answer any questions from people who just might have some early on. I also do it primarily to make sure I don't have any technology problems, because it is not unusual for me to have an issue with my speakers or my camera or my microphone or something. And so I just log on early to make sure all of that's set up, but I don't start content until right at the top of the hour because I want to make sure that everyone who's counting on me starting at a certain time, I honor that. So that's why this is going on this way. And I understand that other people do Blabs in other ways, and this is just how I do mine. So, all right. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. My name is Dr. Anita Marcazzani. I am an executive coach and a licensed psychologist. I work with business owners, leaders, professionals, just everyday people who want to move forward and upward in their lives and their businesses. And I help them reduce stress, reduce overwhelm, increase productivity, which is kind of the thing that we're going to talk about today. Because when we talk about procrastination, what we're really talking about in a backhanded way is how to be more productive. And that's what I love to help my clients help figure out. So that's what we're going to talk about. If you have any questions, please feel free to either grab a seat and we can chat about it face to face, which is always fun. Or you can, if you don't want to be on camera, that's fine too. You can chat, you can type in the chat box there and type me your question. And I'd be more than happy to answer it as best as I can as we go along. So, and if you want me to elaborate on something, let me know. So, and I had mentioned this actually before I started recording, and I'm going to mention it now, and I'll mention it again later on. But if you're a reader, if you like books, and if you're interested in what I consider to be, I would call it the gold standard of productivity books out of all the books that I've read, and I've read a lot. And, you know, some of them really do just regurgitate the same stuff over and over again. And there's nothing wrong with that because the basics work without question. And so sometimes we just need to hear the same things over and over again before we actually start implementing them. So there's no problem in the fact that we have to regurgitate the same stuff. But this one really actually has some many more practical examples and very realistic strategies. It's called The Now Habit at Work. Okay. Neil Fiore is the author. I've actually been to one of his workshops, so I can speak from personal experience that he's the real deal. He's a therapist by training, and like me, but he also does executive coaching. Great book, really great strategies. A lot of the strategies that I recommend, he happens to recommend too, so that's always nice. And also I grab some strategies that he uses and I recommend them with my clients. So if you're a reader and you like to have books on productivity, and this one's good because he specifically addresses procrastination in there. And most good productivity books do that, but that's a good one. So I would recommend that. And I'll mention it again later for people who are joining us late. But okay. So procrastination is a popular topic because I think we all do it. And I was mentioning before I started the show that I know a lot about how to be productive and how to avoid procrastination, how to conquer procrastination, even though there really is no such thing as procrastination. And I'll tell you about that in just a few minutes. I still do it. I put stuff off. I avoid things just like everybody else. And I think, none of us feels good about that. We all hate that we do that, I think, which is part of the problem that procrastination kind of grabs hold of us. So I'm going to, not string this out any longer. I'm going to tell you why there is no such thing as procrastination. And it's a little bit of a mindset shift. And this may help you grapple with some of the stuff that you feel like you're putting off or avoiding when you start realizing that we're not really procrastinating. You don't have to think about the fact that you procrastinate. What we really do is we only do what we want to do. We don't procrastinate as much as we just do what we want to do, and we don't do what we don't want to do. And that may sound obvious, but what happens is when we have a whole list of to-do items, things that we have to do, that we don't want to do, and you really don't want to do them, and then you have a choice, though, of doing things that you do like to do, what are you going to choose? 9.5 times out of 10, we're going to choose to do the easier thing or the thing that we like better over the thing that we don't like to do at all. And then we label that procrastination. We're procrastinating on that topic that we don't like. And here, I want you to stop talking about yourself in terms of being a procrastinator, or I am procrastinating on this topic or this task. And here's why. And here's why I want you to really ingest this idea that there is no such thing as procrastination. The word procrastination is very pejorative, okay? It has a very self-condemning or even other-condemning tone to it. So when you say to yourself, oh, I'm such a procrastinator, oh, or I'm procrastinating on that, it's a very kind of shame-inducing label that you're putting on yourself. I am just procrastinating on that. I've been procrastinating for months or days or years or hours or whatever. And it labels a sense, it saddles us with a sense of shame and self-condemnation because we're a procrastinator. And that's something that's really kind of a nasty concept to know, oh, there's just something that's so important and I'm just not getting to it. That, you know, that you're talking about yourself in very negative terms. It may be true, but by labeling, by kind of piling on yourself, there might be something very important that you're not doing. But then when you say to yourself, oh, I'm just procrastinating that, or I'm such a procrastinator, that labels shame. It actually piles shame on top of the fact that you're not doing this task. And as I talk about all the time on this show, what do we know about things that make us feel ashamed, embarrassed, self-conscious, all that sort of stuff? What do we do with things that make us feel ashamed? We avoid them. You never approach things and attack things that make us feel ashamed. We don't do it. So here you may have this unpleasant task or series of tasks, things that you just don't like to do. And it's okay. It's fine that you don't like to do it. That's not a problem. So what I want to encourage you to do is do a big mindset shift. And instead of saying to yourself, I'm procrastinating on that, because what that does is that keeps a distance between you and that task by saying, oh, I'm just procrastinating on that. It almost legitimizes the fact that you're putting that to the side and avoiding it, because it puts this sense of shame, this wall of shame between you and this rather unpleasant task. Okay. Now we have this barrier of shame between you and that task. And that shame is going to keep you even farther from it. So instead of saying, I've been procrastinating on that, what I want you to do is be honest with yourself and say, I just don't want to do that. I just don't feel like doing it. I don't like to do that. I don't want to do that, whatever. And I just wanted to do other things instead. Now, some of you may think, well, wow, that's like that in many ways that might seem worse because it makes it seem like you're, if you admit that you just don't like to do something, that somehow seems worse than admitting that you're a procrastinator. But I'm telling you, if you just acknowledge that you don't like to do something, and that actually takes a lot of the steam out of it, a lot of the tension away from it. But if there's this task that you don't like to do and, oh, I'm just procrastinating, it just builds so much anxiety and tension and stuff around the task that you just push it away farther and farther. Instead, what I want you to do is start thinking in terms of, hey, this is just a task that I don't like. Okay, someone's calling in and I don't know who they are, so I'm going to see what's up. And hopefully we'll see you soon.
Hi. I would like to stay audio. Is it possible to stay audio?
Yes, of course. Absolutely. Yes, that's fine.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah. What's your name, ma'am? What's your name?
I'm Ziba. I come from Afghanistan, and I've been living in Germany for 13 years now.
Wonderful. Very good.
Yeah, thank you. You just said that one reason why you postpone things and you defer things is that is shame. But in my case, it's not shame, and it's not the task that I don't like to do, but I love to do this task. I've started studying a major that I love, but the problem is it's a bit too heavy for me. It's a bit tough and stuff is a little bit difficult. So I love to do it, but on the other hand, it's difficult, and I'm a mother of 2 children. I have to work, and sometimes I'm overcharged. But there are days like today that I have nothing else to do but to concentrate on this task. I have to revise for my exams, but I just don't do it, and I come to blab and listen to people. Then I talk to people, or I just watch TV news, or read something else, do something. Yeah. So it's not shame, and it's not a task that I don't want to do. I would really like to do this, learn the stuff, and have good marks. So what do you think? What can I do?
Okay, there's actually several pieces of advice that I have for you. So if you have an exam coming up, my first piece of advice for you would be to, hold on, we have another person calling in. Hold on real quick, Ziba, and I want to get this in here. So my first piece of advice to you, if you have exams coming up and you need to study for them, it sounds like, whoops.
You know, it's not that you didn't have a few, 1 or 2 valid points. It's your delivery. It's how you go about this shit. If you will shake from the door like, oh, it's nice sitting at the head of my table and being at the head of the table and blah, 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 and this and that. No, the folks trying to eat. But what I don't get is, did you check out girl's face from when, as you went on to start throwing all this shade, it was like,
Miss Danica, I can't even, are you asking me a question?
everybody's like, is this bitch kidding me? Now, bitch, you were quick to air out people's dirty laundry. And girl, clearly, you know that we got to know that you got dirty laundry too, bitch. You know that, right?
I'm not quite sure. Anyway, Ziba, sorry. If you have an exam coming up, what I would recommend strongly is that you just start by setting very small chunks for yourself to study. Usually when there's a big exam, there's a lot of information that you need to review for it and make sure that you understand. And that can sometimes feel very big, especially if it's a topic that you struggle with, even if you enjoy it. If it's a topic that you find hard, but enjoyable, but still hard. So that could be the barrier for you. It's not that the shame that I mentioned before, like you said, it's actually this sense that you know that once you dive in, it's going to be hard work and it may take some time. So here's what my specific suggestion to get you started on the exams at least is set a time for 15 minutes, just 15 minutes. Say to yourself, I'm going to spend 15 minutes just reviewing the first portion or of your material, whatever the topic is that your exam is. So just set aside, just say, I'm going to, for the 15 minutes, I'm going to just get this started. Okay. Don't focus on studying for the whole exam and getting it done, because that's a big chunk that can feel very overwhelming. But if you just say, I'm going to spend 15 minutes to just get started reviewing the material. And then when you're done with that 15 minutes, then what you can do is you can decide, okay, either you can continue if you have time, or you can set a time when you're going to spend maybe a half an hour the next time to review it. Okay. Or you can spend half an hour instead of 15, whatever. The idea is to make it a smaller amount of time and not tell yourself, oh, I have to study for this big exam.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? And then the other thing is if you have children and a job and school, that's hard to juggle. Okay. It's normal to feel tired and want to watch television and be on Blab and not study for an exam. You have a lot of things going on. So sometimes we feel like we avoid things, not because we don't enjoy them. Like you said, this is something that you enjoy, but we avoid it because we're just tired. We have so many demands in our lives that are being placed on us, and we just get tired. So I would encourage you either, are there things in your life possibly that you can, where you can like delegate, like have people help you so that it makes certain areas of your life easier, that frees up your time, allows you more time and more energy to do your studies or to spend time with your children or whatever. And and learn how to say no. Like, make sure that you're only using your time that you have for the things that are really important to you, and don't use your time for the things that aren't important to you.
Yeah, but I think that's a good point. We just have to learn to say no. But I think personally that my problem is that I have trained my brain that I will somehow manage this, even if I postpone it. The last week will reach to all the stuff, to cram it and to understand all the stuff and have not the best marks, but somehow to pass the exam. And I think I have trained my brain. I'm not the youngest one. I'm 36 years old, but and I think that's the problem for many people, that they train their brains, that they procrastinate, they postpone, and they defer their jobs, their task, and they manage this. So I think that's a neurological problem too.
Yeah. I would actually agree with you 100% with that. You train yourself. So what you're doing, but you're telling yourself, not you, but some people might be telling yourselves, oh, I'm procrastinating on this. But actually, it's not true procrastination. If you know in the back of your mind that you're not going to pick up your materials to review it until you're just going to cram that last week and just make yourself miserable, then that's not procrastination. That's actually something you've planned to do all along in the back of your mind. You may not have said it out loud, but it just might be that's just the way you do things. And so that's not procrastination. It's not. That's how you've planned to do it all along. Now, what might be happening is you might be arguing with yourself throughout the semester. You may be telling yourself, oh, I hate that I leave it to the last minute. I wish I could study, more regularly or on a more regular basis so that I'm not cramming by the end of the semester. And that's different. That's a different story. But don't, if that works for you, that method, then it works for you. I mean, I wouldn't worry about it. Now, if you don't like it because it makes you totally miserable, and that's a different story. Or if you feel like your marks are suffering because of that, then that's a different story. But
sure. I think I could do much better if I would start studying, start revising much earlier. And I think this kind of thinking has affected my other aspects of life. For example, I'm not punctual. I wait for the last second. I do some other stuff. For example, I do the dishes, and I think, okay, I'm going to fetch the kid in 10 minutes. Okay, I have 3 minutes to do the dishes. Then I do the dishes, and all of a sudden I say, oh, 10 minutes are done, and I'm late. And I'm very often late. So I think it's very. I think this is procrastination too.
It is. I think I would agree with you. I think a lot of people do that. They keep thinking, at the very last minute, I can get this one thing done and then I'll do that other thing. And so let me ask you, how old are your children?
They're 7 and 12.
Okay. Excuse me for a second. Were you this same way before you had children?
Yeah, sort of.
Oh, were you? Okay. Because it might not be, I am of the opinion that having children changes us sometimes, that we develop habits that might not be the best when we have kids because we're trying to juggle so many things. So, I mean, being late is a problem for sure, because it becomes a problem for other people too. So there's a time management actually is at the basis of a lot of issues with procrastination. So what I want to do too is I want to actually get moving a little bit more on what I was going to talk about too, and maybe you can pick up some gems from that. But another thing is that I would urge you to be really careful about saying no to things, to do that more frequently, because if you're putting too many things on your plate, then of course some things are not going to get done. That's just logical. And the older we get and the older our children get, sometimes the more we need to say no, and because now you're in school and that has to be a major priority for you. as well. So it's you can conquer it, but I want you to be realistic about that. Sometimes you're not procrastinating, you're making a choice. That's the habit. It's not even you just have this habit of leaving things till the very last minute and then cramming them in. And so what you do is you can tell yourself, I want to develop a new habit. And then you want to be really clear on defining what that new habit is. So it might be at the beginning of the semester, I want to make a habit of half an hour every day reviewing everything from that class or whatever. I'm just making something up. But but be very clear on the new habit that you want to develop. And, now you know clearly what you don't want to do anymore. So get real clear picture on what you do want to do and how you want to do it.
Yeah, Anita, thank you for answering my question. Thanks for listening to me.
Thank you so much for joining in.
Yeah, one can see that you know what you're talking about. That's great. Thanks again.
You're welcome. Hey, what are you studying, by the way?
I just finished one major that was pharmaceutical engineering, and now I'm studying business administration. So it's a bit
pharmaceutical engineering. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I bet that requires, that requires a lot of stuff.
Yeah, it's demanding. Yeah, it's all what I have chosen to do are very demanding stuff. The kids and the studies and going to work. I think that's part of the problem, that some of us are overcharging ourselves.
Yes. And so, but here's my, and I work with a lot of clients who are in exactly your position. So what I tell them is, that's fine. Make sure that you don't say yes to anything else. Okay. Those are those are your priorities. So you need to make them your priorities. And that means saying no to everything else. And you may have to do that for a couple of years until you get your degree completed or whatever, certificate or whatever. So it's tough, but it's so important that when you put those important things in place to create your schedule, to create your structure, create your life so it supports your success in those areas that are so important to you.
Yeah, thanks again, Anita.
You're welcome. Thank you for your comments.
I'll stay a little while and listen to you, but I leave the seat for someone else.
And you're going to go study, right?
Yeah. In 7 minutes.
All right. Okay, there we go. All right, in 10 minutes, here we go. All right, have a great evening.
Bye.
Okay, that was great. If anyone else has more questions and you want some direct advice, I'm happy to do that. You really do. So, okay, to kind of go back, procrastination, the reason I say there is no such thing as procrastination is because what we're doing is we're just choosing to do the stuff we want to do instead of the stuff we don't want to do. I mean, that's just the reality. And it's important that you acknowledge that to yourself, because Naziba was saying she doesn't have a problem with the shame that comes along with procrastination. Like if you're telling yourself, I'm a procrastinator, sometimes people do though. And it becomes this sense of something that you want to avoid. It kind of reinforces this sense of staying away from it. So stop telling yourself that you're procrastinating on something. Just be honest. Say to yourself, I'm not doing that because I don't want to. Now, the reality is in life, we have to do things that we don't want to do. This is the message that I try to send my kids all the time, don't we, as parents? We want our kids to understand that, because we have to do things that we don't want to do. We can temper that, of course, with things that we do want to do, but eventually there's going to become a long list of things that have to get done because you don't want to do them. So what I want to do is define a few things here. And first of all, when I talk about procrastination too, or avoiding things that you don't want to do, I want to be really clear. I'm not talking about minor things. So let's make a kind of a decision to differentiate different types of tasks. I'm talking about tasks that are really important, that if you avoid them for long enough, that it becomes a big problem for you. So I'm talking about avoiding taking care of yourself, maybe avoiding going to the doctor when you know something is wrong, avoiding things at work that you know you need to accomplish in order to either do your job or to get promoted or something like that. Avoiding having important conversations with people. So when I talk about avoidance, procrastination, or not doing what you don't want to do, I'm talking about major things. We all have minor things. My husband and I, we joke all the time about there could be a light bulb that blows out And it might take us months to change it. You see it every day, and it's so irritating. And we kind of think, oh, we're procrastinating on changing that light bulb because it feels like it's such a big task. And then you do it and it takes all of 20 seconds. And you're like, why didn't I do this 3 months ago? So I'm not talking about those sorts of like minor things, because that's not a huge problem if you don't change the light bulb. It is a huge problem if you have a major medical problem brewing and you're avoiding going to the doctor. Okay. So I want to talk about the tasks that are really important, or maybe you're avoiding losing weight. Maybe you're avoiding starting an exercise program. Maybe you're avoiding quitting smoking. Maybe you're avoiding your business, okay, the things that need to be done in your business. There's lots of things that we avoid, big things that become a big problem if we continue to avoid them. Those are the things we want to talk about. So the first thing to do is to acknowledge to yourself the reason that you're avoiding it. You're just avoiding it because you don't want to do it, plain and simple. So then the thing that you need to do is to realize that, of course, you do have to eventually do it. And then you want to carve out very specific time for you to do this activity. So what I want you to do is to understand that you're not going to naturally just want to start doing this activity, whatever it is. Let's say you're avoiding going to the doctor, okay, because you have some chronic cough. It hasn't gone away for 6 months, and you know something is up. And you haven't gone to the doctor about it, and you just don't want to. And so you've told yourself, okay, Anita, I'm not procrastinating on it. I'm not doing it because I just don't want to do it. So how do you make yourself do what you don't want to do? Isn't that the key to life, right? And it is hard. So the very first step, the very first important thing to do is to create time in your life that is specifically designated to deal with that specific task. So to get to the doctor means that you have to have a doctor to go to. So you have to find a doctor if you don't already have a doctor. You have to call that doctor, make an appointment, and then you have to actually attend the appointment. So there's several steps there. And what you want to do is you want to make sure that you are doing each of those steps to make sure that you have time, create time and space in order to do each of those things. I had worked with a client once, and she put off going to the doctor, and she had a pretty major medical problem. It turned out she had a major medical problem, and she had avoided going to the doctor for like a year and a half. It was pretty dramatic. And when she and I started working together, she was a business owner. I started working with her as a business coach, a leadership coach, and we started working on other life stuff as well, which usually happens with most of my clients. And what I told her is, she said she didn't go to the doctor because she didn't have one. She never really formed a relationship with a family doctor, so she didn't have one. And so the idea of going to the doctor, it wasn't even that she wasn't necessarily avoiding going to a doctor. She just didn't even know who to go to. So the first step, the reason that she was procrastinating on it, was that she knew she had to put a certain amount of research or time into just figuring out, who do I go to? How do I even know how to figure out which doctor to go to? So we talked through that. We spent a session, and we went through a list. You could go online, you could ask your friends, you could ask your family, ask your neighbors. And so that was the first step. And once she started asking people and started talking about and getting names, then it was very easy for her to pick up the phone and call and start making appointments and that sort of thing. And the ball got rolling. So what happened for her, and I think this happens for a lot of people, is that we have a task that we're avoiding. And oftentimes we're avoiding that task because there's some pre-work that needs to be done before that we really just don't want to do, or we don't know how to do. And so you want to also ask that about yourself. Is this the task that I'm avoiding, or is there stuff like beforehand that I can't even quite figure out how to do? And is that the reason that I'm not doing this bigger task? If you have a project at work that you're avoiding and you just don't want to do it, but you know that you have to because it's part of your job, it could be that there's something about that first step that you're unsure of, or that you have a lot of uncertainty about, or just, you have such confusion, and maybe you're even embarrassed to acknowledge that. So you, again, at least acknowledge it to yourself, because nothing is going to get better until you acknowledge to yourself the true reason for why you're avoiding things. And so you'd want to say, okay, well, maybe I lack this particular research, or this resource, or I lack a particular piece of information that I need in order to do this task. And you might be embarrassed to go have to ask somebody for that piece of information. So that at least acknowledge that that's the situation, because once you acknowledge it, it kind of takes the energy away from it. And then you can kind of talk yourself into saying, okay, I'm just going to bite the bullet and go ask Joe Schmo, what I need for this piece of information. I'm going to feel embarrassed about it, but I'm going to ask him because then I can get this done. And then the ball starts rolling again. So sometimes it's that really can help. So I want to encourage you to really step back a couple of steps from the task that you're avoiding, and to figure out, why are you really avoiding this? Okay. It might not be procrastination. It might be something larger. You don't know what doctor to go to. You don't know how to quit smoking. You don't even know what the options are to quit smoking. A lot of people procrastinate on, doing phone calls for their business. They hate to do phone calls. They hate to do follow-up phone calls, cold calling. They just don't like getting on the phone in general. That's a big problem for a lot of business owners. So one of the things that you'll want to do is you can, sorry, I have a tickle in my throat. I'm trying to not cough to make sure that, because I don't want to be so unpleasant when I cough. Let me guess one more vote. Excuse me. So for people, I'm sorry about that, who have a problem with their business and making phone calls, or some part of their business that they just don't like to do, it might not be the actual phone calls that trip people up. It's knowing who to call, like actually the names of people to call. They don't know who to call. And if they do know who to call, they might not know what to say. They don't know exactly, if I call Susie Q, I don't even know what to tell her when I call her. And so those are the reasons that you're not calling somebody, you're not doing your follow-up phone calls. So what's the solution there? Well, you figure out who to call. Write down a list of all the people that you want to be calling, that you should be calling, and then generate a general script. What will you say? If you don't know what to say, who can you ask or get support from to help figure out, what do I say when I call this person? Okay. So again, sometimes the task that we're avoiding, there might be a reasonable reason that we're avoiding that task. It might be because we lack something in order to actually do the task. Okay. So be honest with yourself about why you're avoiding it. Now, if the truth is that you're avoiding it, you have everything that you need, you don't need any more information from anybody else, you know exactly how to do it, all that stuff, you just really loathe doing it for whatever reason, then you absolutely have to carve out time in your schedule to make sure it gets done. The best way to do this is to actually schedule it in your calendar, to figure out how much time is this task going to take, and make sure that you schedule nothing else for that amount of time. And I mean nothing else. And you have to promise yourself that you're not going to text message or anything else. And so you might say, this Saturday afternoon from noon to 5 is when I'm going to go out and dig up the garden. And I say that because I personally hate, let's say this, I don't like gardening. And I mean, it's not that I don't like gardening. I hate digging. I hate digging stuff up. So I've done a lot of it in my life, and I just hate doing it. So anyway, so for me, if I want to get a garden ready, I would like to actually just have somebody else do the digging part of it, because I don't like that part. But if I'm going to have to do it for whatever reason, it is best if you do it yourself. I guess you get more of a sense of fulfillment. Anyway, what I have to do is I have to say to myself, okay, Saturday afternoon from 12 to 5, I'm just going to go out and I'm just going to take care of this. I'm just going to figure out where this is going to be, and then dig and get the shovel and get it done. And so all week long, I know that that's what's happening Saturday, and I can psych myself up for it. You can gear yourself up for it. And that way I know, okay, it's going to get done. And I look forward to it, not with a sense of excitement or anticipation, because I'm never excited about digging in dirt, but with a sense of, I'm just going to get it done. And I get very focused. And so there's a buildup to it that can be kind of energizing, not exciting or nothing I'm looking forward to it, but it can be energizing. Okay. So that by the time Saturday afternoon comes, I'm ready to get it done, because I've been thinking about it all week long, or all day long, if it's something that you're going to do tomorrow, for instance. Task isn't as bad. Okay. So yes, my friend, Yo, Adrian. Am I the first person all day to say that? 9 times out of 10, she says the task isn't as bad as she first thought after stressing about it for days. That is the God's honest truth. Frank and I, my husband and I, we say this all the time. There's something that we just we just don't like the idea of doing for whatever reason. And we schedule out time where, I'm just going to do this. I'm going to do this. And then we do it, and it takes like a fraction of the time that we thought it was going to take. It wasn't nearly as bad as this, what we imagined in our heads. It's so true that the task is rarely as bad as what you build it up in your mind to be. Yes, thank you for pointing that out. And that's one reason that it's so powerful to actually schedule it into your calendar. You're going to get it done when it's scheduled there. You are. And then not only when it's scheduled there, but when you can think about it, when you anticipate, okay, this weekend is when I've scheduled out time. I've cleared out my schedule to take care of it during this amount of time. Yes, Eat the Frog first thing, that book, Eat the Frog. Excuse me, just trying not to cough and offend you guys. Definitely. I mean, that helps in general, but sometimes we avoid the frog, and then the frog just sits there. But when you say to yourself, all right, this is exactly when I'm going to do it, then it's much more likely to get done. So sometimes we're avoiding the task, and we build up this sense of procrastination, and then we label ourselves, I'm a procrastinator, and that builds up a sense of shame and self-condemnation and self-consciousness, blah, blah, blah. And so that makes us avoid it even more. And sometimes, it's just that the task is hard, like our wonderful caller suggested from Germany. She said, this thing that she has to do, it's just really hard. If that's the case, remember what I told her. What you want to do in situations like that, where the task that you're avoiding is just really hard. You may know how to do it, but going in, it is going to be hard. You want to just break it down into chunks that are manageable for you. And that may sound obvious, but most of us don't do that. We just say, oh, I have to study for this huge exam. And, the idea of studying for, let's say, a final exam, just like sitting down, where do you start? Where do you even start? So sometimes just telling yourself, all right, I'm going to spend 15 minutes to just get started with this task. Don't focus on finishing the task. Focus on just getting started and spending a specific amount of time to just get started with that task. Don't worry about finishing it. Once you get started, once you start to immerse yourself in the task, a lot of things will clear up. You'll start to realize that it is something that you can handle. It is something that you can complete, and it is something that you will complete. And your brain will be engaged in a very different way. So don't focus on the end and getting something done. Just focus on getting started. And by the way, I wanted to mention that particular tip I did get from this book, just to remind you all. It's called The Now Habit at Work. I'm not an affiliate or anything. I just really like this book. Neil Fiore, he's a great psychologist. And that tip about focusing on getting started, not getting finished, is really, I got that from him. And it's really powerful, because how many times do we say to ourselves, oh, I have to go, when with me, oh, I have to clean my house. Well, sometimes my house is a big mess. And so the idea of cleaning the whole house is just, so I avoid that. And it's not even that I hate cleaning or anything. It's just, it feels really big to clean the whole house and get, all the bathroom and scrubbing the toilet and, doing all the dishes and scrubbing the grease off the kitchen, all that stuff. That's just no fun. So, instead of doing all of that, what I've learned to do is I had to tell myself, okay, I'm just going to clean the bathroom. That's it. And if even that feels too much, I might say, okay, I'm just going to clean the toilet. And then you just start. And sometimes, usually what happens, let's say 8 times out of 10 for me, once I get started with something, that usually leads me naturally to the next one. I'll start cleaning the sink, and then I'll get to the shower, and all of a sudden the bathroom is clean. When all I really had started out doing was I just said to myself, I'm just going to clean the toilet. Okay, so I just focused on getting started, not cleaning the whole bathroom, not even cleaning the whole house, just the toilet. And all my focus went there. And once I got started with that, then everything kind of falls into place. And a lot of stuff happens like that. Just focus on doing the first step. That's all. Because you need to do the first step anyway. You may as well just put all of your energy, all of your attention, all of your motivation on that first step. A couple of years ago, I did a video on motivation. It was actually one of my more popular videos, but it's had a couple hundred viewings on YouTube, which for me is a big deal. And I talked about motivation and how do you make yourself do something you don't want to do if there's this big task you don't want to do it. And it is so powerful to just when you have something big to do, a big task, you have to understand and remember that you do not need the same level of motivation for the entire duration of the task. You don't. You just need enough. The largest amount of motivation is required just to get something started. Okay. If you think about the laws of physics, that an object in motion tends to stay in motion, object at rest tends to stay at rest. And it takes a huge amount of energy to take something that is at rest and to push it into motion. That's when the most energy expenditure is required, to move something that's at rest and to push it into action. That's when all the energy is required. And it's the same thing with doing a task. Most of your motivation, most of the energy that you need is you should direct towards just getting something started. That's why I think I love this tip so much that Dr. Fiore talked about, how just focus on getting started. Just do 15 minutes, the first 15 minutes of something, because that's it. Once you get started, then momentum will kick in and you'll probably be able to get a lot farther along than what you thought. So that's a really, really valuable way to kind of trick yourself into doing tasks that you just don't want to do, that you're trying to avoid. Okay. Are there any other questions? Gosh, it's already almost quarter of the hour. This has been a fun time. Let me see if there's any other. I just have to scroll up here because I haven't been paying too much attention. Thank you for all the kind words, everyone. If you go to thefreedomprescription.com, which is my website, and you sign up for my email list, you will get a 43-page ebook, a free one, on it's a productivity booster and a stress buster bootcamp ebook. And you'll get a whole bunch of tips, like a lot of tips in there on how to just generally boost your productivity and how to reduce your stress at the same time. And I have the link there in the chat box. Maria put that up for me. Thank you, Maria. Because I tell you what we call procrastination, a lot of people talk about, but I want to change the conversation, because at the beginning of this year, when I started these regular blabs, these regular shows, one of the things that was important for me to do was to talk about the things that make people feel ashamed and make people feel self-conscious and even embarrassed, because that's what keeps us from our best. We don't tackle the things that make us feel embarrassed or ashamed. We tend to avoid the things that make us feel that way. So procrastination is one of those things. The term procrastination has such a negative tone, has such a negative connotation, that it makes us feel ashamed. I mean, sometimes people wear the concept of procrastination as like a badge of honor. Oh, I'm procrastinating on that. Like they're so busy and they're just, avoiding this task. But I think they're just being funny about it, because I think in their hearts, they're like, they really don't feel good about it. And there's a sense of shame around chronically avoiding the same thing, especially because remember what we're talking about here. We're talking about procrastinating and avoiding doing the things that are going to make your life better or prevent your life from getting worse. Filing taxes. I mean, how many people wait until the very last minute to file their taxes? And I know a lot of people who end up missing the April 15th here in the United States. We have April 15th as our deadline to file our yearly taxes. I know so many people who end up missing the deadline, and they end up having to pay penalties and file for an extension, the whole 9 yards. It's kind of an ordeal. Because they just avoided it, because the money makes them feel ashamed. What they have done or haven't done with their money makes them feel embarrassed or self-conscious, and they don't even want to look at it themselves. And so then they end up not filing taxes, or end up being late filing taxes, which means you owe more money in fines and penalties. So there are certain things in life that is really important that we learn to stop avoiding them and just approach them and just tackle them, and not allow embarrassment and shame to get in the way. And sometimes we create a sense of embarrassment and shame where there doesn't need to be any. And when we label ourselves as a procrastinator, I'm just procrastinating on this, that's an example of a way to layer shame on top of an already difficult thing that you just don't want to do, that's already unpleasant. Don't make yourself feel self-conscious about it in addition to that. Oh, Maria reminded me too, over at my website, there are several videos about motivation. Over the years, probably motivation is one of the top probably 3 topics that I deal with my clients. I sometimes have to kind of push them to do things that they don't want to do because other things seem more important or more urgent, and they just leave all these other things to the bottom of the list. And so I have to kind of push them to do that. So we have a new someone joined. Sean, hi, how are you? And the YouTube link on maximizing motivation. I like that. I personally like that video. I loved filming that video because that's the one, hopefully with the right one, Maria, that I filmed in Puerto Rico. That was great. That was a great trip. And I didn't plan on filming that particular video there, but I was so inspired by what was going on there that I thought, oh, I have to do this. So any more questions about the fact that there is no such thing as procrastination? People, we just do what we want to do and we don't do what we don't want to do. So the key is how to make yourself do what you don't want to do. And hopefully we've talked about several strategies that help you do that help you implement this idea of making yourself do stuff that you don't want to do. And remember, focus on the important stuff that's going to really make a difference in your life. If they're little things like me, I was telling you about, shoveling out the garden, that's not a matter of life or death. We don't grow our own food in order to sustain ourselves through the summer. So it really is not a matter of life or death for us if we don't go out and dig the garden out. So for some people, that is a problem. Like that would be, if they didn't do that, if they procrastinated on that, they avoided that would be an enormous problem. Okay. So let's change the self-talk here. Let's stop labeling ourselves as procrastinators. Let's just admit they're just things we don't like to do, and that's why we're not doing them. And then figure out a plan to do them. Usually there's a reason we're not doing them. Okay. And sometimes that reason is because there's something we don't know that we have to figure out what that answer is before we can make that move. Think about putting off going to the doctor, putting off quitting smoking, putting off doing your taxes. Maybe you don't know how to do your taxes. Maybe you don't know which doctor to go to, how to find a doctor. And that's the real reason why you haven't gone to the doctor. It's not that you're avoiding going to the doctor itself. So you need to take a couple steps back and figure out where the gap is. Okay? You'll let me know tomorrow. Thanks, Adrienne. I appreciate that. But the link I put on my Facebook page to this today, I said I made sure to tell people don't delay in coming over to watch. So, all right, I'm going to wind down now. I hope this was interesting for you and gave you some food for thought. I really appreciate it, Ziba, that you called in from Germany. That was wonderful. I appreciated your insight, and I wish you the best of luck. You are juggling a lot of stuff, so please don't feel bad about having a tough time doing that. You have a lot on your plate and you're doing some pretty impressive stuff. So go get it and get it done and do yourself proud and do your children proud by getting that degree finished. So hope you're doing well. And I will see you all next Monday for the Dr. Anita Show. It's been great. Just one more plug for this book. Like I said, I'm not an affiliate or anything, but it really is the best book out that I have read, The Now Habit at Work. All right. See you all next time.